All right, so a lot has happened the last couple days. The Game Awards played a couple days ago, and since the Game Awards were played, controversy after controversy has just happened. Okay, that's not a lie. Not that many controversies. Mainly two different controversies. The first is how the fuck did Astrobot win Game of the Year? I don't know I don't know how the fuck that won against Shadow of the Erdtree, Final Fantasy Rebirth, and Black Myth Wukong. You're telling me to beat that shit, but whatever. There's a whole thing about that. Apparently it was rigged. But that's neither here nor there. That's not what I'm talking about. The thing I'm talking about right now is apparently what happened was Siri got revealed to be the next protagonist for The Witcher 4, and that has sparked a whole massive outrage because apparently people are just screaming woke DEI, fuck this, why they always make us play a woman, yada yada yada. And it's caused this whole scenario right now. It's a whole fucking situation. But I was gonna I just wanted to give my whole opinion on this. That's what this video is. Just me being opinionated, me being an opinionated fuck. That's just what this is. But I'm gonna preface this by saying this. If you have an issue with Siri being the main protagonist of The Witcher 4, you clearly have not touched any of the games, right? You clearly haven't, right? The thing is, Siri has been built up to be the protagonist in The Witcher 3. Hell, in The Witcher 3, it literally ends with Geralt handing over the mantle to Ciri, calling her a witcher, giving her the sword, and even saying that he was retiring. That's literally what happens at the end of Witcher 3. And even if you haven't played the games, if you watch the Netflix series, even though the Netflix series isn't that far into the story, it's clearly portraying that that's what's going to happen. Like, that's how they're building up Ciri to be a witcher. That's clearly what's going on in the series. So if you have a problem with it, you're just an idiot. That's just my opinion on that. However, even though I don't subscribe to the idea that it's a problem that Siri is the main protagonist, I think I kind of understand what's going on. I think what's happening is, right, you have to understand that this whole woke DEI thing, it is a thing. It is an issue. It's not necessarily happening with I wouldn't say it's necessarily happening with The Witcher and Siri. I wouldn't say Siri's woke or anything like that, but it is 100% a thing, and it is a problem that's happening in the gaming industry right now. I think the problem is that I think what's happening is people are just so fed up with DEI and woke that The Witcher is just catching strays. That's just what it is. I think that's just what it is, because you have to understand something. It's like a routine. It literally is like a routine. It's a whole cycle, right? Every year for the last like 5-6 years, every year it's the same thing. A game comes out, one or two, right? Usually one, but a massive launch comes out. It clearly tries to push a narrative instead of telling a story, right? And then the consumer base does not subscribe to said narrative, right? And then the publisher and the developers, instead of just acknowledging this and being like, okay, we fucked up, we made something you didn't like, we'll do better and make something else you like, hopefully you'll support that. Instead of doing that, they then proceed to insult the consumer base who said they don't like what they made, right? And then once they insult said consumer base, they then act shocked. And act like they don't understand why that they're insulting their consumer base has now caused their play base to drop and their sales to plummet. Like, it's a routine. It happens every year. I don't get it. I don't get how these developers and publishers, every year it's the same thing. They get so confused as to thinking, we just called all of our players bigots and racists. I don't understand why they don't want to play our game. It just doesn't make sense. But anyways, that's literally what happens like every year. It's like an annual thing. And yeah, dealing with that year after year, people are just sick of it. People are just getting tired of it, and now they're just lashing out on anything that can be considered woke. I'm not saying The Witcher is. I'm not saying Siri being the protagonist is. But I think that's just what's happening, right? But I will also say this: there's also this narrative or trend going around saying that, oh, there's just men just don't want to play for female protagonists. And I will say this: I do think that's just a straight up a lie and just disingenuous. I think it's just to say people just don't want to play female protagonists, because that's just straight up not true. I mean, history has proven that that's not the case. So you look at the past, there are major franchises and major video games that have female protagonists that nobody really has an issue with, i.e. Metroid, i.e. Lara Croft, i.e. Bayonetta, i.e. Drakengard, i.e. Mass Effect, you can play as female Shepard, i.e. Nier Automata. The list goes on, i.e. every gacha game under the sun, i.e. it's female protagonists are not the issue, right? Just because something has a vagina doesn't mean it's a problem. But so I think the idea of saying that is just a lie and disingenuous. But the main issue here is that because of massive companies like Sweet Baby Inc., for example, that push that instead of just making a good game, they want to use a game as a vehicle to push a narrative that they subscribe to and try to force it on these people, or try to force it on us, the consumers, and then it doesn't work. Like majority of the time, it doesn't work. I don't understand why they keep doing it. It doesn't work. And then it's been happening over and over, and people are just getting sick of it. People are just getting tired of it. You know what I mean? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. It's just what it is. So now we're getting to a point where I think genuinely we're getting to a point where now people are just done with like, for example, we're just done with Sweet Baby Inc., right? You know what I mean? And the problem, I think the biggest issue when it comes to female protagonists is they're just not done well. I don't know what it is. Like these developers in these video games they're just so ass at making good female characters. I don't know what it is. Like you look at something like Arcane. Nobody had an issue with, the majority of the cast being female, or there being LGBT in it, or like Vi being looking like The Rock with jacked as shit. Like nobody had a problem because they were good characters. That's all it is. They were good characters. They were written well. They were compelling. They were enjoyable to watch. It was a good show. Nobody had an issue. That's just what it is. The problem is that I don't know why, like these companies are just these developers and these publishers are just so ass at making good female characters. It's odd. I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? And the problem is that they want, instead of making a compelling female character, they want to make a strong character that can combat like, the male perspective. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'll give you an example of what I mean. So like if you look at this isn't a video game, but I like to talk about this because it was so shit. You look at She-Hulk, right? Look at She-Hulk and then the Hulk, right? You look at how they handled the Hulk, and I'm talking about MCU. I'm not talking about the comics. Fuck the comics. I don't read any of the comics. I'm talking about MCU. But you look at how they handled the Hulk, right? And Bruce Banner, and the inner conflict he had to deal with, that having to come to terms with his alter ego and his aggressive alter ego conflicting with his pacifism, and how he had to struggle with that for so long, so much to the point where he tried to self-delete. That's literally what happens in the Avengers. He tries to self-delete and he couldn't do it because the Hulk stopped him. So he had to accept the fact that he couldn't take his life in his own hands, and had to make do with that. And then eventually, after going through a series of ups and downs, so much so they had to leave the planet and all that, he then finally comes to terms with who he is and the Hulk, and they then start to coexist, and then he becomes I think Dr. Hulk. I think that's the name of the character, Dr. Hulk, where he can live as the Hulk without losing his mind, and finally be at peace with that. And it took a series of movies, and the struggles he had to deal with that. And then you go to She-Hulk, who is in the same situation of having to deal with an alter ego, and she just does it and is good and gets it right off the beginning because, and I quote, she's a woman and deals with a lot more. That's literally what she says in the show. No struggle, no nothing. It's just, I have a vagina, so it means I can do it. That's literally what happens in the show, and that's the issue. The issue is, I don't know what it is. The problem is that a lot of these film protagonists, they're just written so horribly. It's honestly something that needs to be studied. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm I don't know. Maybe I'm a misogynist. I don't know. That's just what I see. And that's the biggest issue, because no one. I promise. I know for a fact that the issue isn't that these characters are female. It's that most of them are just so written so horribly. I mean, look at Forsaken. Nobody talked about how that, I forgot her name, but nobody cared about the fact that she was a woman. They cared about the fact that she was a shit character in general. That's just all it was. You know what I mean? So I think the main issue is they need to stop trying to force an ideology through these characters in these video games and just make a good character. That's just what it is, right? And honestly, I think it's going to start happening soon, because you see it now. A lot of these companies are just straight up they're not subscribing to DEI and woke. It's slowly coming down. I think honestly within the next five years, you might start seeing like you'll probably start seeing more video games back how it was before, with like people with these developers trying to experiment with the stories instead of just going with the time and trying to be trendy, you know what I mean? But that's just my thoughts on all this. I told you, this is an opinion. There's no facts, no nothing. This is just my thoughts on all this. I just wanted to make a video and talk about this. But yeah, I just think I do predict in the future, like 5-10 years, there might be despite the fact that the woke and DEI is slowly going down and it's continuing to go down. I do think that despite that happening, there will be more female protagonists in the future. They just need to get better at writing them. That's just all it is. That's really all it is. They're just horribly written. When the character is good and the game is good, the gender is not an issue. The race, gender, whatever, what have you, it's not an issue. When the game is good, nobody gives a fuck. When the game is shit, that's when they start pointing these things out. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's just my thoughts on this. Maybe you disagree. If you disagree, totally respect it, but that's just my thoughts on this.